Thank you so much for joining us for another edition of All Angles. I'm Dion Jackson-Mill, and a very special welcome to our viewers on onespotmedia.com. So we're talking about children, teenagers, and social media, as well as children, teenagers, and privacy. Do the two actually go together? A lot of people don't think so. Well, joining us this evening in studio, we have with us the chairman of the Office of the Children's Advocate, Children's Advisory Panel, James Braham. Also with us, Monique Long, who is executive director of the Jamaica Youth Advocacy Network, and human rights advocate Glenn Roy Murray is with us as well. Before we go to our guests, though, TVJ's Vashon Brown has this overview.
We can't show you their faces because they're minors, or share much of what they said because some of the words they're using are not fit for broadcast. But essentially, the members of this group of 10 St. Catherine High School students are each in turn describing what they would do to get access to male or female genitals.
I'm a prince fan for the hey. Me was gonna die for the hey. Me will climb a mountain for the hey. Me jump a fence for the hey. Me will tell my knee for the hey. But me now put me.
The children are on the St. Catherine High School compound and dressed in uniform, participating in what's called for the D and for the P challenge, a social media challenge. But St. Catherine High maintains that this is not behavior befitting children, and certainly not on a school compound. Officials told the Gleaner newspaper that the video has brought the school into disrepute, which is why the students were suspended for a week. Some people say the suspension was too much. We asked President of the Association of Principals and Vice Principals, Linton Ware, whether the school overreacted.
We want all of our young people to be in school. We want for them to be there for the 190 days. We want for them to be active participants of the teaching and learning process. We want all our young people to do well. And that is why, as leaders of our institution, we have put framework in place as it relates to rules and regulation with the expectation that our students are going to follow.
This issue has led to discussions about children and social media use. Mr. Ware maintains that while measures will have to be put in place to educate students about their use of social media, rules should be obeyed.
One other thing that we need to understand here is that the posting of information, it will affect our children. Might not affect them now. They're not going to be children all their lives. They're going to grow up into becoming adults later on. And we want for them to be successful young people. Our responsibility as educators, our responsibilities as parents and individuals of the communities is that we will all have to join hands together in saving the nation's children.
Outside of the school, some also feel that parents should monitor their children's social media pages like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. But what kind of monitoring should parents do, and to what extent should children be allowed privacy? Vashon Brown for All Angles.
All right, thank you as always, Vashon. Well, let's pick up on that issue in terms of the monitoring. And we've been joined as well on set by the Reverend Peter Harding, I beg your pardon, who is guidance counsel at Papine. And Rev, so let me start with you, because that issue of monitoring, it sounds good, but I don't know, is it easier said than done?
Yeah, much easier said than done. Yeah, it is very difficult.
Let's ask the average parent, which social media platforms are your kids on, and watch them go off?
No, very few parents are aware of the wide variety of social media platforms that exist. And so to start dealing with monitoring, that's a nightmare. But I think that we have to start somewhere. And I think that there are some basic things that they can do. And I think that the key to monitoring, I think, has to do with relationships. The kind of relationship that you have with your daughter, your son. And I think that will go a far way in making disclosure a possibility, right? But monitoring for someone who is certainly under the age of 18 is a nightmare, but something which needs to be done.
Okay, I soon get back to whether you even know whether they're on Snapchat or,
right. Okay.
or because a lot of parents think Facebook, and many teens have long. James laughs at the very mention of that, so let me just hand over to you there. This issue of monitoring, is it the way to go, or is it just too difficult?
I think monitoring would be difficult, but we must, before you get to the stage of monitoring, I think before even we're at a particular age when we are interested in social media, what we are taught in the home influences what we post on social media. And so if usually what we say and what we think among our friends and in our household is the same thing, usually, what we post on social media. And so if, as
Really?
the Reverend
Because
said...
I find a lot of kids just don't think. They're at somewhere, take selfie, posts.
I mean, as the Reverend said, relationships are important, especially for disclosure. And so if the relationship is one in which disclosure is made, then the need for monitoring will be less than in a relationship where disclosure is not being made. And in a relationship where disclosure is not being made, monitoring will be made even more difficult because the child will then be going out of their way to ensure that they cannot be monitored. But to say that people are thoughtless on social media, I don't think that's a fair generalization.
It's
I
not?
think there are those among us who do think. Yes, sometimes, occasionally, we're caught up in the moment. But generally, we do think. And OCA did roll out a campaign, Be Social, Be Smart, which was, well, initially it started out with a survey during schools to find out the usage of social media, how it is used, what students are doing, and so on. And then from the survey, the Office of the Children's Advocate developed a document. A document is a very fancy name of putting it. A little booklet. It's colorful, and the Reverend sounds like he's seen it. And it helps us to make wise decisions or to be informed of what is an unwise decision.
Right. Hold that thought. I'm going to come back to that issue of unwise and wise. Monique Long, what do you think?
I think when we talk about monitoring young people, again, the ideal situation would be that young persons are going to be open and honest about their social media use. Like, that's the ideal. That's what all parents hope they'll get from their children. But the reality is a significant difference. It is a problem. It is a barrier. But you want parents to create spaces where young people can, possibly tell them, if there's something harmful. He's talking about young persons, posting according to what they learned in the home. My experience and the experience of the young persons I've worked with are completely different. There's not usually this long, serious thought process. A lot of it is very instant. You take a picture, you post it on Snapchat. You're at a party, you're dancing, you post it on Snapchat. So there's not much consideration all the time for what potential harms, what potential repercussions might come from certain posts. I think a lot of it is done in the spur of the moment. A lot of it is very instant nowadays. So I think, we have to keep that in mind when we're having a conversation.
Yeah, Glenn Murray, your thoughts. And added to that, perhaps just throwing in the fact that sometimes a lot of what is posted, you don't even know. Yeah. Somebody takes a photo of you and posts it, and you come across it and go, whoa.
I mean, I think that when we think about monitoring, we should bear in mind that the fundamental role of a parent is to build the capacity of their children enough so that they can make wise decisions. And so when we think about how do parents treat with social media, we think about it in that context. Have I prepared my child enough to make wise decisions about their social media use? And also when we have the conversation, we need to bear in mind that social media is not just attractive to children, and the issue of reckless posting is not just a children's issue. Adults do the same thing. The very challenge that launched this entire discussion comes from adults. And so we need to look at social media and the ways in which people social media as a testament of human nature. People like attention, people like engagement, people like to share who they are and self-aggrandizement. And so think about it broadly as to what is so attractive about social media that people do the things they do, and recognize that it will be attractive to children. And so the role of a parent is to let a child know what are the dangers in using social media and how can I help you to make the best use of it, rather than seeing it as this big thing, this thing that you need to hide your kids from.
Should there be a line, though? I mean, parents do different things. You have some parents who insist that you need to friend me on any platform you're on. There are other parents who say, I want the actual password so I can actually access and see exactly what it is you're posting and so on. Is there a line? Let me ask James first.
Is there a line? I don't think we can make a set line, because each child would be different and each relationship would be different and each child will react differently to each line. And so, I mean, I wouldn't worry about my parent asking me for my password, because I don't think they'd even know how to log in. But
I thought you were going to say because there's nothing for them to see.
No, but then that's the next thing. So they don't have to worry about logging in, because there's nothing to worry about, because they have built my capacity.
He's saying this because he realizes they're watching.
They have built my capacity to be able to conduct myself in this space, which is, important.
Yeah. Reb, is there a line?
No, I think that that clearly there has to be a line. It's because there are the gaps are very wide. And I think because the gaps are wide in terms of trust, the trust gaps have broken down across the board. And so I think that we have to be very, very real and practical. And it goes back to what I said earlier. It's a function of relationships. How well have you cultivated good, sensible, honest, open relationships from the very start, get-go? So then you walk with them through primary school, into high school, into the treacherous field of high school. And then you begin, because at that point, walking into high school is consistent too with puberty, adolescence, and the glamorous world of high school years. So listen, several things are at play, and therefore it is what you would have built up, the capacity built up from earlier years, now come into play. And with the trust building, I mean, it's a whole lot of things that need to be worked on. But I think that monitoring has to be done, and I think that if the parent takes initiative, because what we're talking about here, Jan, is the best interest of the child. Yeah. And that's what the law speaks of, and we have to protect our children, and protection is a critical factor.
All right, I tell you what, we have to go to break. When we come back, we'll hear from some students, their views on this, and then we'll be back with our panelists. So stay tuned. We'll soon come.